All right, well, I can see a ton of people coming on in. It's increasing a little bit by little bit. So if you can hear me, welcome, guys. We're gonna only spend like a minute or so on introductions, but I want to see who's here and see. I mean, virtually see. Don't turn your cameras on. No need to waste bandwidth on that. I'm sure, and I hope you are comfortable at home with your computer in front of you, listening. Type in the chat box, give me your name, location, and what you want to learn. We're gonna just give it one more minute and then we're gonna jump on in. I know your time is super valuable and I wanna make sure that we honor that. Joan, welcome. Petersburg, that's right outside Richmond, right? This is where you get to learn my amazing geography. Galax, Southwest Virginia. All right, Jamie, learn more about best math practices. Awesome. Colonial Heights, is that near? Oh, Sherry, tell me a little more. Hey, Tacoma, welcome back. I see Allison. I got some friendly faces from students in a past program. Thanks, Sherry. All right, and Henrico, that's another one. Tammy, welcome another. And I see Maggie. Gosh, this is great. Hey, Mimi. Oh my gosh, so I feel like I could learn from you guys in doing tonight. So anyway, throw in your introductions. I'm gonna go ahead. Hopefully you guys are here tonight to learn a little bit more or share a little bit more about your own practices in math equity and teacher leadership, and really developing that. Hi, Erica, good to see. Again, and oh, Kristen. Okay, this could be like a reunion in some ways. I was telling Jenna, I recognize so many people on the participant list. Hang out afterwards, but let's get this started. And what we'll do is we could catch up afterwards, or maybe we'll set up a separate Zoom later on for another like math specialist reunion. All right, so welcome guys. This is actually my first time using Zoom in a present mode. So you guys can bear with me. If it were in Collaborate, you know I would have that, you know, raise your hand and all those things. For those of you that don't know, my name is Courtney Baker. I am a professor here at George Mason. Oh, and I have advanced it too much. Hang on, back we go. Got a little excited there. All right, I'm Courtney Baker from George Mason, and I'm here to talk about rethinking your coaching practice to equitably lead mathematics virtually anywhere. And so go ahead, and as I'm talking, this is going to be a big exercise in multitasking. And because we're educators, I know that we are so capable and appreciative of the opportunities to do so. So go ahead, and I'm going to switch this slide and tell you a little bit about me. And I want to hear about you. I want to know what your role is in education. I want to know who's in the room. I want to know what it is you do so that I can make those connections to this journey that I've gone on in my own practice, to the practice, the journey that you're going on and you're continuing in your own practice. All right. So go ahead and throw those. Yep, I've got any online. I know. So my goal, like I said, is for you to constantly participate, actively listen. There's going to be about 7 or 8 different resources that I have found useful in my journey to become on teaching equitable mathematics and an anti-racist teacher educator. I'm going to respond to the chat box. I want the chat box to be yours. Take it and run away with it, guys. This is where the most powerful part of tonight's webinar is the networking that happens in that chat box. You're going to talk to one another, to build on the ideas I'm sharing, and I really, really want to encourage that. All right. So this is me. This is what I look like in pre-pandemic days. Now it's a lot more yoga pants and headbands. But like I said, I work at George Mason, and one of the things that I've been working on the last couple of years is my own development of what does it mean to have an equitable mathematics teacher practice, and what does it mean more recently to become an anti-racist teacher educator. A lot of this stuff is stuff that we either do or that I try to help inform. I'm really passionate about math teacher leadership and math specialists. I've got a colleague, Abby, who's going to come at the end. If any of you are interested in learning more about our program, this is the program that, gosh, it's getting longer and longer. 15 plus years ago, I engaged with in my own learning journey. And it's been a huge, you know, something I'm so passionate about is this math teacher leadership. And you can speak to that in the chat box as you hear these individuals who are coming back for more. And I did say it's more collaboration and more resources. So today's goals, again, connect and network, reflect on our practice, share, and apply a lot of these ideas to practice. So in the chat box, I'm actually going to have Jenna is co-hosting this with me, and Jenna is an amazing marketer. And I'm going to have Jenna throw in that first web link in there. So the first thing I want to do is share with you a specific article that documents a little bit of my specific journey in becoming an anti-racist mathematics teacher educator. Okay, this is something that, again, my goal for the next hour is to fill your chat box with resources. Okay, so one of the things that I loved about doing this research, though, was we used a notice and wonder framework, right? So it provided us with, we used some common readings, we explored, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we used it and what we did. We're working on a follow-up article, but for you guys at your schools, whether you're working on your own practice or with others, that notice wonder framework is so much more than a tool to let students into the conversation and participate. It's a non-judgment way. It's a way for them to talk about things without getting into some of the uncomfortable or feeling, that personal piece. All right, so there's a first resource for you guys. And as I share things that I've learned or experienced in my own journey, both as a teacher educator and as a teacher leader, I want you guys to throw things in the chat box too. More than happy to network and connect, okay? And that's really because, like, today we're in here side by side, which is so important, because if it's our goal to develop this equitable practice or practice that promotes, an anti-racist teacher practice, there's tons of raw emotions connected with it. It requires vulnerability. We need to share. And my goal, so that's a big goal anyway. And then you add it into, how many of you guys are still in a virtual teaching environment or an environment that's constantly changing? So what I'm going to share with you are tools. And this is one of those things of how can I meet the most people's needs? So when the title of this seminar or webinar was virtually, meet the needs virtually anywhere, or learn how to equitably coach virtually anywhere, the point is that the resources I'm sharing with you tonight are really resources that you can use in any situation. There are resources you can use in asynchronous, synchronous, hybrid, face-to-face, phone calls, email, personal communication, conversations, tweeting, right? So I tried to find the things that no matter where you were, whether you were a classroom teacher, a K-12 math specialist, that you would have that. So it's these tools are there for us to really learn side by side. I also, because some of the things, it's very raw and vulnerable and emotional as we talk about changing our practice, because we have to acknowledge the system is currently unjust. So to do that, I am also going to talk about assume positive intentions really briefly, and what the business world calls swift trust. So I was sitting on an airplane on the way home from a conference pre-pandemic, and I sat next to an amazing woman, very professional, and she was in the business world, and she was so fascinated by my job. If you know me, I will start a conversation up, have no fear. And we started talking about this thing of swift trust. And basically in the business world, it's this idea that things happen so quickly, things are changing all the time, connections to a pandemic, anyone, that assuming that the people you're with, whether you know them or not, have the best intentions at heart, no matter what they say or do, is the way that they kind of have to operate. So it's this mantra of swift trust or assuming positive intentions. So I think that's so important here, because you're going to make mistakes. Like I said, it's vulnerable, it's messy, and it's putting you, anytime you learn something new, it's putting you in this place of discomfort. So I want to start connecting this, let's start easy. So in the chat box, what New Year's resolutions did you make? And if you don't want to share one you made, what is a New Year's resolution that's traditional? Or what is a New Year's resolution that a friend, spouse, partner, child has made? All right, go ahead and in the chat box, throw that in there, okay? Oh yeah, and reminder from Jenna, select panelists to attendees. Yeah, and that way everyone else gets it. Hey, become more organized, read more. Oh, hey, Tracy, yoga. Oh my gosh, book healthier, be a more intentional. Oh, Jennifer, you're meeting your New Year's goal. I love it. Survive the pandemic. I'm hoping all of us in here do that. Walk the dogs. How many of you got dogs this recent year? Okay, so keep them coming. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I have a coach, right? And my coach and I were talking, and I was telling her about the things I wanted to do. I was going to try this dry January thing. That's going well so far. last week kind of taunted that a little bit. You know, I'm working out more, a lot of what you're reading more. I have to do more puzzles, to stop for an hour in the middle of the day. But some of these things are really hard. And so I was talking about my challenges with this woman, and she says this quote: everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. And that just kind of made me think about that a little bit. Like, you know, we all have like, oh my gosh, what could we do if I had more time? I'm looking recertification, attend, Mary, well done, attend more webinars, disconnect from all technology. That is one of mine as well, Mariana. And one of the things that we also talked about is how hard the change process is at the beginning when you're first doing it, right? When it's the most, you know, just looking for the word, failing at 7 o'clock at night, when it's the most pertinent to making the change is the hardest, right? So it's messy in the middle and then best at end. But where's my Zoom button? Here we go. I saw this on the other, and you guys will know I like a lot of images. So just like the space shuttle uses more fuel in the first 60 seconds than it will use up during its entire circumference around the Earth. So that made me think, how much energy did we put in when we were first learning to teach? How much energy did we put in when we're trying to engage in a new practice? It's a lot, right? And so thinking about all these New Year's goals, and as we're looking, so many of us are excited about, you know, changing from 2020 to 2021, it's important to map out plans, be strategic, be intentional. I heard one of you guys say about what it is we do. Well, the same thing goes for coaching. So and maybe you've not thought about this. And some of you guys have goals that have related to coaching. So now in the chat box, and remember, do the all panelists section or tab for you guys. You know, what are your goals that you made, or did you make goals for your coaching practice? Right? Is it maybe quarterly or monthly? Go ahead and just have those thrown in the chat box too. All right. Because I want to know, like, this is also great for if you hadn't thought about making goals yet in your coaching practice or your teacher leadership practice, depending on what your position is. This is a great chance, that even if you have made goals, to take a look at what others are doing, right? What is everyone in our community here tonight engaging in as we're looking at refining our practice? Because I know we're reflective practitioners. That's why you're here. You want to learn more. There's something that you need. When you don't know what it is yet, but you want to fill that toolbox. I'm hoping that collaboratively we'll be able to do that tonight. Okay. Yeah, learn more, Tracy. I connect with that so much. That is, someone was like, well, what do you, I'm like, I constantly learn and listen to podcasts. Okay. So I want you to think about your goals and how many of you, and just throw in the chat box, how many of you made a plan, right? Just like it's important for lesson planning. In fact, research will say, you know, when teachers are learning the lesson plan, if they write it down and detail it, they're more effective. They're more likely to accomplish their goals. Well, the same thing is true for teacher leaders. We need to have a plan, okay? And we need to, don't always necessarily end up sticking with it, but it's something that should fuel you. It's something that you should be passionate about, and it's something that needs that intention. All right, I'm going to come back to that word a lot, that intentional use, right? And so when we specifically think about changing our coaching practice, it should scare you a little. It's a change. It's uncomfortable. It's new, right? But then now we're also thinking about developing an equitable practice or even an anti-racist teacher education practice, right? And so we need to realize that we can be fueled and scared at the same time, but a lot of these changes begin with us. So if we want to see the changes that we dream of in math education, a world without track, I mean, pick something. What are your dreams for math education? We need to start with us before we can influence others. And so that's where tonight's webinar is really designed in two parts. The first part, I'm going to share with you 3 different resources that you can use on yourself or with others, okay? And they're great questions and prompts you might find I'm biased, like obviously these are things that I'm excited about, but I want you to also think about then, how might you use them in your practice? Is it something as a in a classroom, you know, just to read? There's going to be different levels for where everyone's ready. Okay. The second part is going to be a time for you to practice, because the first time you do something, you're not going to hit the target, right? You might not ever hit the target, right? For me, this idea of being a reflective practitioner means that I'm growing. I am constantly growing all the time. And I'm not, if I get to a point where I think I'm done, I think I need to find a new profession. Okay. So the first one, and I switched my slides around. So now I'm like, what happened? The last minute teacher change. So like I said, the tools that I found for you guys tonight are going to be kind of like this Swiss Army knife and multi-purpose. They're designed for you. So if you are seeing a tool and you're like, gosh, how could I use that in my virtual practice? Or how could I use that in a concurrent practice? Throw that question in the chat box tonight, because you have, I'm trying to think about 73 other people in this room. Jenna's not a math ed person. You have 73 other people in this room who can help you while I'm continuing to talk. So please, please, please use that space for you guys. All right, so part one, filling your toolbox. All right, big thing about making a plan is you want to have a proactive practice. And yes, Tracy, I've got all the links and the presentation ready for afterwards. They're going to be cleaned up. They're going to have a transcript that goes with it. And thank you already. If it's awesome, I'm in the first 15 minutes. I feel like my job is, but you guys made me feel at home. Thanks. The proactive piece is you got to know, you got to think ahead. Just like we have to anticipate student responses for kids, we need to be proactive in our coaching practice. And so just think about it, right? The more we plan, the more we do. It's like putting on that life jacket, right? So say, I was like, well, if your ship sinks, would you rather be wearing a life jacket already, or hope that someone can throw one to you and then it'll come close to you? And if you think about Titanic, that nobody takes it from you, right? So there's this whole idea about the idea of being proactive can put you in such a positive situation where you may not know how close you are to land, right? But you know that you've got this life jacket, you've got this safety vest, right? And it can help provide you with that support that you need in the moment, okay? And that's what developing an intentional practice and planning is. So in my job, I'm so fortunate that I get to research math teacher leadership, math coaches, and math specialists. And in the last few years, a colleague and I, who used to be here at Mason and is now at West Virginia, Jonna Bullard, she and I have been analyzing some transcripts of math coach work. It's actually being published this spring. We're super excited. But when we analyzed it, what we're finding, no matter the position, whether it's a district supervisor, a classroom, or someone who's in like a full-time coaching position, there are three things that you can control as a math coach, right? Because so many things you can't. You can't control what the teacher brings. You can't control if the students are absent. You can't control, just like in teaching, you can't control so many factors. So often in these interviews where we're talking, we would hear people say, well, I would do this, but I can't because, and there was always a because. We also heard a lot of talk about math coaches having conversations that sounded like, well, I'm going to do this, and this is what it is. So there were two very different styles of communication, not necessarily leadership, because they led in different ways, and these were just interviews of people talking about their practice. But what we noticed across all the interviews was that there were three things that people had control over. And we're going to talk about those three things so that you can think about how those three things impact and influence your coaching practice or your teacher leadership practice, and ultimately empower you. All right. So agency. This is if you believe in you, right? So this is having the belief in yourself, being able to, I'm switching the slides, to think that you can do something. So what does that mean for you as a coach or a teacher leader? Well, it means that if you don't think you can make a change, you're not going to make a change. all right? Because you will never put yourself in the position, or at least we found, you're not likely, I won't say never, you're not likely to put yourself in a position of making change if you don't think you can do it, okay? And if you don't think you can be effective. So the individuals who believed they could make a change, who believed they were effective and could influence teachers, teaching, school administrators, any school stakeholder, took assumed responsibility for their actions, and believed that they could really make that shift. So what I want to share with you now, and go ahead, Jenna's going to put the next link in the chat box. This is a resource that is created by a group of school stakeholders. And I don't know if any of you have seen this resource. It's fantastic. It's in depth. I've looked at it multiple times over the last year, and I always get something different out of it. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. How I work as a presenter. I hope you're clicking on that link and looking through it. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you, what are you noticing? What are you interested in? What is there a piece of this resource that's really sticking out to your practice? Okay. And I ask you, one, to give yourself that commitment. Invest in, this is something that interests me and I want to look more into it, but also connect with others. So if maybe you're looking at this and you're like, gosh, I'm not sure how I could use this in my practice, you can skim to the chat box and maybe one of the people in there has an idea or a page number, okay? So this, when you download it, by the way, is a huge zip file with like 7 documents in it, okay? But what this does is it offers, and I'm just going to read this because it's so powerful. It offers guidance and resources for educators to use now as they plan their curriculum, while also offering opportunities for ongoing self-reflection as they seek to develop an anti-racist math practice. The toolkit Strides, which is what I'm going to refer to it as, Strides, serves as multiple on-ramps for educators as they navigate individual and collective journey from equity to anti-racism. Okay, I want you again to keep looking at this resource, or not, your choice. I am going to continue showing you some screenshots from it though. Okay, and I've got the page numbers and the Stride and the website up at the top. So if you want to follow along, it's there, but please skim and see what you want to put in yourself. I love that Stride 1 is like a monthly planner, and it walks through each of the months in school year and gives a different focus. And it's really about unearthing the inequities that are currently in mathematics education. And it really focuses on how are we going to take the systemic racism that's inherently embedded within mathematics, and really break it down to what are we doing? What are our actions? So for example, there's reflection notes. It's an interactive PDF. You can record it, you can print it, you can give it to teachers. How do I manage the conflicting demand of the time I have to teach the grade level standards and knowing my students? Whoa, how huge, right? Not only does this question acknowledge there's way too much curriculum. One, we have a curriculum and standards. 2, it's jam-packed and there's not enough. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to approach this? Are we going to start off assuming we need intervention? That's a little deficit, okay? So what are we going to do? And these are there's readings and things that are all connected with it. I'm just showing you snippets about this resource. So that question was, I liked that one first. And there's multiple questions for each reflection. So I think that month was October, is getting to know the students. And then this one, the one on page 17, is a structure that's focused on the first one was focused on this is focused on who are the students. And the one I showed you before is focused on what you are doing yourself, okay? So how do I group my students? How do stakeholders come together? Who's present in the gifted or honors classes? I asked them, who's not present in the gifted or honors classes, right? These are the types of questions and these reflective prompts that are there. Again, I think they're really, really, really powerful for you to go through them individually first and think about them, or move your school through this, or a grade level team, or a support. And it's, for me, one of the things that I've loved about this resource is that it gives you a starting point. Because when I first began my journey in becoming, and I'm going to say anti-racist explicitly, because there's a piece of equity that until you acknowledge that the system's inequitable, right, or unjust, that it's hard to move forward, right? Because otherwise we're perpetuating the same things. So as I think about that first link that Jenna shared, which was the article about part of my journey in becoming, and I remember we talked, it was raw and open. What was holding me back even when I was working with striving towards equity was this idea of an action. And what is it I'm going to do? And how do I verbalize it? And what am I going to say? And what are people going to react? And there's a part where you have to unpack your own identity, right? And what are the things that perhaps we take for granted, right? Our privilege. So this is where I think this resource is absolutely fantastic. Stride 5 is specifically aimed at leaders. Okay, so in Stride 5, and here's a screenshot, just an example, there's some principles they talk about, but if you look at the directionality of the arrows, what I really am excited about with Stride 5 is it starts off with the coach, and you're looking at some things, and now you're working with a teacher and supporting them, and there's like 6 more pages that they talk about this process. And it provides you as a teacher leader specific guide points and check-ins and questions to help lead this change that's needed across every school system. Again, trying with my little zoom arrows. This one over here, also in Stride 5, talks about aligning the coach's experience with the coachee or the teacher. We'll say coachee because it could be your administrator, right? It could be parents, it could be teachers or teams of teachers. So it talks kind of about this alignment of like, what are some things for you to consider as you're doing this? You know, understanding that there's going to be some growth together, maybe honoring ideas that have been there. And these are things, again, that we know, but sometimes just having them in a resource is really powerful. And I like this, again, I like this resource for like the joint journey piece of it. Trying every time I go to click the next button, my panel at the bottom of my Mac shows up, and I'm like, I do not want all those beautiful features. And then there's also this aspect of alignment and culture. What does it mean? And it just talks about, they provide you with resources for book study. They provide you, yeah, and Kate, I really like that idea. And even to take it to where you are with your experience, right? How are you, and we'll talk about this in a second, how are you going to position yourself? So I want you in the chat box, and keep looking if you want to look, but just throw out some ways that you see this connecting with your practice? What are some initial thoughts? How might you use this? And again, make sure you put in that all panelists piece. And again, this is our goal, is to network and to build. Is there a page number? Was there a stride that you were looking at? Yeah, equitablemath.org. Go. They've actually got, so this past fall, they did them October through December. Oh, I'm not going to get through my whole webinar. I'm seeing this now. I always plan too much. October through December, they went and did these amazing webinars, and I wasn't able to attend all of them. But if you go to the website and scroll down to the bottom, they have their webinar, just like our webinar tonight is going to be available for you. Well, I think Jenna said she's going to email it to you guys. There are going to be these webinars at the bottom of the equity, was it equitablemath.org, right? Yeah, and Tacoma, this is something that I'm going to go back and use, and even use with my doctoral students, right, as we're continuing our journey. And yeah, Rachel, these are those ideas, another friendly face. Rachel, these are those ideas that are really just, they're there. And people are starting to talk about these more openly in public, I think. And these are resources that you as a teacher leader can bring to your schools, and think about how you can drive, whether it's online or face-to-face. Okay. Yeah, I agree, Sally. I think this idea of professional learning communities, maybe optional club in the beginning. There's so many ways that you guys could integrate this. Okay. If you've been in a class with me before, you know I have way too much planned. I get very excited, but I want to give you another resource. Okay. So how this also works, carry on exploring this one. Keep your conversations going in the chat. Please don't stop communicating with each other, but I'm going to continue forward and talk to you about positioning. All right. So positioning, that was a little too quick, is not just how you position, what your position is. It's not just that you're a math coach, but it's about how do you position yourself in relationship to others. Okay. And what I mean by saying that is are you, so here's a couple ways to think about it. Right? Are you positioning yourself as an expert of mathematics and someone who provides resources? And we could unpack coaching heavy, coaching light actions, because there's ways to provide resources that are coaching heavier. For those of you who know what it is, coaching heavy is more of a there's coaching heavy and coaching light, and there's like surface level and then like those dig deep dives. Coaching heavy are those dig deep dives, and there's ways as coaches and teacher leaders you can provide resources in a deep way, having those PLCs, unpacking them, assigning responsibility, right? So are you someone who's going to give? Are you a resource giver? Are you going to be someone who explores? Are you going to position yourself as a learner with the teachers? Are you positioning yourself as that kind of in between administrator teacher, or are you positioning as one of the teachers? Okay. No, in the research that we did, there's a lot of productive ways to do this. The one thing I encourage you, I strongly recommend, is that you think about who are you interacting with and how are you interacting with, okay? And it's really important that we give everyone, if you are an individual in your building with specialized knowledge and passion, and I say everyone here is, you are here on a Thursday night, on a school night, spending an hour on a webinar in which which time is the most precious commodity we have. So you are here to fill something, right? You are passionate about mathematics teaching and you're an advocate. And having that knowledge is so powerful that when we decide and you can't work with everyone all the time, and you can't work with everyone in every way. But when we say no, or we purposely make choices to not work with people, then it's not equitable, and we're hurting kids, right? Which is never our intent. And I'm going to say this about myself. I remember as a math coach, there was a hallway I never walked down. You know, back when we had like face-to-face school, I wouldn't go down it. There was an individual down that hallway who made me feel uncomfortable. It wasn't like she had a vendetta against me, but at the same time, I avoided it. And that hindsight, that wasn't fair to her kids. That wasn't. I would go to the teachers I enjoyed working with. I'd go to the ones that I wanted. And it's not saying that I need to go back and spend all my time there. But now I think about like, well, what would have happened if I had acted differently? All right. So there's a lot of power in how we position ourselves in terms of who has access and who does not. And again, I bring in this idea of swift trust and positive intent. We have to assume that all the teachers, school stakeholders, parents, kids, everyone we are working with, especially in the pandemic, is coming in with positive intentions. I truly believe no one is out there thinking, what harm? I'm so excited. I'm going to do some really bad math today. What souls can I crush? Like, I don't think anyone's going out there doing that. Yeah, and I mean, me too. And thank you for sharing that, right? Like, we go with where we're comfortable, and that's easy. And so having an equitable practice and having a practice in where we're going to strive to become anti-racist educators, that's going to be uncomfortable, right? And yeah, I Google images. Oh, I'm a big fan. All right, another resource, Jenna, pop it in. And this is a resource. There's going to be two. So she's going to send the first one. I think if we got it. Yeah, the first one is a calling out in PDF. And it is specific they're kind of like sentence starters. They're talk moves that you can use. And then the second article, Speaking Up with Tearing Down, is actually an article that really digs into deep to why we need to have this. Now, I'm not going to be able to dig in deep tonight, but for you as a math teacher leader, I want you, if this is something that you're interested in for yourself, using these types of sentence structures, and I'll unpack them in a minute because I know you're looking at them. I want you to be able to think about those and try them, but I also want you to know the why, right? Because we're math teachers, right? We need to know the why. That's the one question we always ask. So the why is the article, and I'll give you a little bit of background on it. Okay, so there's the idea between calling out and calling in is that they're different, right? So when you hear something and you might not agree with it, or you know that it's wrong. So specifically, let's think about we're going to talk about this later, tracking, right? Or grouping students in a way that's super inequitable, right? So we want to stop those practices, right? That's from National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics. We have a lot of work to do, and we're just starting this, and we're continuing, but there's so much to do. And so instead of calling out the practice, saying, I need to push back, do you understand what you're saying? We don't believe that. That type of framing as someone, if I'm giving those words to someone, that type of framing stops and does not encourage people to join the conversation. It immediately puts people on defense. It's again, uncomfortable, but we have to embrace a little bit of the uncomfortable, okay? These are often sometimes coming from when people are uncomfortable, and it can be harmful, okay? Calling in, while the thing the person said might still be uncomfortable and might still be hurtful, if you, in response, whether you're speaking up for someone else or responding to someone else, if you think about the impact of your words or actually look at the first one, how might the impact of your words or actions differ from your intent? You're now inviting the person or group of people, whoever you're having this conversation with, to come into the conversation, right? So it's a different way of framing things, and I love this starter. It's something that I know some of my students in the last few semesters have worked with at their schools, or given this to their school stakeholders, or used them even in times where there were some conversations that were centered around race and some practices. So I think this is for me, it's a resource that you can use immediately in your practice to think about your own words. You can share it with others. Because hindsight's always 20/20, right? There's plenty of times, I'm sure you guys have them too, where you're like, I wish I would have said something different. I wish I had stepped up. But in the moment that it happens, you don't know, the words escape you, right? Sometimes you're so shocked by what you hear. Or you don't think it's the right time, or would everyone else feel the same way? And that's that part of being vulnerable, where practicing these words, find a friend in this community tonight to practice these words with, and think about, let's practice using them with each other. And when we can, I use them with some of the other instructors in the math specialist program I lead. I want to make sure that I have those same things so that I can call people in. And over the past, specifically over the past year, there's times where Dr. Bitto, dear colleague of mine, was like, I think you just called me out. And I'm like, I feel like you should have called me in. So now we're using that language with each other. So maybe it's not something you're ready to share with your school, but maybe it's ready to share with a colleague or another teacher leader. So feedback, what are your thoughts on this resource? How might you use it? I've shared you a little bit about my practice, and I'll share the words I used to use a lot are, well, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. And I always thought that was like a way to invite people. And then I kind of thought about it more. And it's like, well, actually, I'm giving them a different perspective, but I'm not helping them to see, and they're not always going to see, right? And that's where I love the article that goes with this. It really unpacks, like, sometimes things are hurtful and sometimes there's no reason to not. I don't know. I struggle for words too. So this is a great resource. Yeah. Oh, Rachel, I've got it. How many times? I know. And what I say, I'm saying that too, is like, these are hard conversations. And that's where, for me, that idea of swift trust, explaining it, and most times people are not meaningfully or intentionally saying things. Oh, that's awesome. See, these are the great things I love hearing. It was like, and if you said another resource, I want to know, what was the first resource? That's my question for you. Yeah, and I like the tangible. I like the concrete. I like that it's something to try. And every time I've come back to it, so I've been using it for a year, every time I've come back to this, I see something different because I've grown in my journey. Okay. There's so many, I can't get up everyone. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next one. So we've talked about, third one's agenda. All right. You got to have a plan, right? We talked about goals and goal setting, but often when I talk to math coaches, and this is me too, there's this plan is too big. You guys want to take over the world. In fact, one of my groups of students a couple of years, I think a couple of them are online right now. It was #world math domination, right? Those were our goals. We wanted everyone to do mathematics in a meaningful and productive way and conceptually. And I'm so excited about that. But that's hard to accomplish. Like, we need, it's more than a 3 or 4 step process, right? So it's really important for us to make large goals, maybe a little smaller than take over the world, and then smaller steps, right? And so another thing of research that I've done with a colleague in the past is we explored our own practice of math coaching, and together we spanned K-12. And what are the things that both we wondered ourselves, what are the questions we asked, we unpacked how we did our job, and go ahead, Jenna, and share. Tracy C. Baker at gmu.edu. If you email it to me, I'll add it to the list, okay, after I preview it. And my email is there. But if you guys have stuff and it doesn't allow you to share, just email it to me. And if it's really cool, I'll give it to Jenna and she'll pass it off with you guys. So DMPMC, there's the website. There's a lot of tools. You can use it in a coaching cycle. You can use it in a PD. You can use it in a lesson study. You can use it in a PLC. What it really does is it gets to that intentionality. And you don't have to think about the whole thing the whole time. You can take a part of it. You can take one question. It's kind of like the strides. There's a lot there. But these are the questions that helped us to think about our practice more reflectively, okay? Thanks, Jenna, you're awesome. So what they're grounded in is the math teaching practices, and there's another link for you, Jenna, the math teaching practices, which are NCTM based in principles to action, okay? And there's this whole piece of, well, we have these high leverage practices that are research informed. What are those practices with math coaching? And in math coaching, a lot of that is focused on co-teaching, modeling used differently. Think about, there's like 20 something different structures for co-teaching. So there's a lot of variety. What I want you to do, and I think you guys are, and we don't, I'm going to skip the next slide, but I want you to think about, as you make your goals, how can you streamline them for your teachers, right? We're in a pandemic. Streamlining is great. It was really good before the pandemic. Now it's really great, okay? So what is it you can streamline? For me, myself and Dr. Melinda, when we envisioned this, we always had like this sneaky coaching goal. So I would just tell my teachers, hey, we're only going to work on, I don't know, let's pick one of these. Use, let's say, facilitating meaningful mathematical discourse. That's the only thing I'm going to work on with you guys this year. Just getting kids to talk. That's it. One goal, streamlined. K-12, school, done, right? Then take that now. And think about it. What doesn't fit into math discourse? You can't have math discourse if you don't have a good problem. You can't have math discourse if you don't have multiple ways to access it or have a clear goal or connecting representations, right? Yes, right? They all connect. So sneaky coaching, your school thinks you've narrowed it down to one tiny thing you're working on, where you've broadened it, but helped everyone to just feel like it's just this one thing. All right. So that when you start working on your practice, you have that ability to really dig deep. Actually, I skipped it, but I'm going to go back. If you had to ground yours in one math teacher, and the link's there, they're all at the bottom if you scroll there. I couldn't find a picture of it big enough to fit on the screen with the resolution. But if you had to pick one, or if you've already picked one math teaching practice for your leadership practice, or for your school, or for yourself, which one do you resonate with and why? Right? I go with math discourse because I can give kind of like the calling in, calling out resource. I have a concrete tool, a sentence frame. Oh, Cheryl, why do you pick posing questions? Tell me a little bit more. Like, these are, what about it really resonates with you? And there's no wrong answer. That's what I love about it. Sometimes you can use the teaching practices as like hey, what do you want to work on? And it's a menu. That's also a great way to use it. So being flexible with the same tool is really, really important, right? Yep. The science background. My original degree is in science as well, so I definitely get that. Yeah. Oh, what a different year it is, though, Rachel. I get it. Yeah. I often talk about my own productive struggle. It's literally like, that's my job. My goal is to productively struggle and figure things out all the time. All right, well, you guys keep those coming in. I'm going to do it. We're 15 minutes past where I thought I would be. But what I want to do is just set the stage. We're going to engage in a modified webinar version of a rehearsal. And we're going to offer, I think, some more PD later on in the month. We're talking about doing our coaching institute virtually. And we're also talking about another session of webinars, and I'll do a more of an interactive one. We'll have some breakout rooms and things for that, if it's possible with our system. And so I want us, again, reframing, have this swift trust, positive. Think about the words that we use, okay? So hesitant, my kids, I still think it looks like Ron Weasley like 3 years after using this picture. But then hesitant versus, resistant. Resistance makes you feel like I say this and I actually can't say it. I used to say like a coup, right? But I'm like, well, that's a little too close to home right now. It's like someone's having, I look at this little girl, she's a tantrum. She's in the corner. She's not going to go do whatever it is you're asking her to do, no matter what. Whereas I feel like if I just kind of like got a little bit lower and kind of like asked quietly, like to the little boy, like maybe he would come with me. He's just nervous, right? So I want you to think about teachers like that too, right? Or anyone you're working with, administrators, school parents, and realize, again, here comes a specialized knowledge. You guys have tremendous specialized knowledge. Think about where you are. You've made it through a pre-service teacher program. You've been a teacher for a while. And whether you're engaging in a math specialist or other specialized role, you're taking on teacher leadership. You're looking for. So when it comes to math knowledge, you're really building it of your own, right? But not everyone's on that journey. And so just in the way we want to believe that every student can learn, and we do believe every student can learn, we need to believe every teacher can learn in the same way. All right. And so I'm going to, like I said, we're going to do a modified version of this. And what we're going to do is I'm going to I've summarized it. So Ms. D is a math coach. And she wants to start, she's let's say she's a math coach at a school, and she wants to start conversations that heighten the awareness and prompt the necessary actions that are going to disrupt the current inequitable practices at our school. She wants to talk to a single teacher about dismantling some of these issues of access to high quality instruction. Okay. And again, this is adapted. There's a lot more context in the bigger one, but for 10 minutes, we'll say 7 minutes, I want us to just think about how can we use the tools that we've talked about tonight in this hypothetical practice? What would you do? Or what would Miss D do? We'll say. Okay. So here's what's happening at Miss D's school. The teachers at Miss D's school are grouping students based on last year's standardized test scores. Many of these groups are stagnant and homogeneous. Students who tested below standard are only provided instruction that focuses on memorization and procedural fluency so they can be ready for this year's test. Now, we wrote this rehearsal a year ago, or a couple months, it seems like a year ago, like a few months ago, for a conference, and it's coming up, but it was like right as the pandemic, and we had no idea. I think about the pandemic and student access and how people are so concerned about, concern about students falling behind, right? And in terms of, well, we had a lot of knowledge, and go back to that Strides resource where there's too much math content in a year anyways. So what are you going to prioritize? All right. So we've talked about some of these ideas, the difference between procedural and conceptualization. All right. This is going to be on multiple slides, so don't worry about memorizing this little scene. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some questions. All right. And it's just about a minute or two on each thing because I've got time. It's my time. We're going to use Twitter chat norms. So before your answer, because a couple of them are on the same slide sometimes, I just want you to put Q1, 2, 3 in front of your answer. Okay. All right. So let's see. Again, this button. All right. And the first questions are going to be grounded on putting ourselves. Now, so many hypotheticals. There's a lot we don't know. I understand. But let's think about maybe if you can envision a teacher yourself, a teacher at your school, past you, maybe not current you. You grouped students. Maybe you grouped, like for me, I'm like, my first parts of my teaching career, I grouped students, and the team I was hired on, we grouped students by, we put the high students, the ones who had the high on the test, in one classroom, and we put more of them in there, so then we could have fewer students, that we could target for quote intervention. Okay, so that's kind of this model that Miss D, as a math coach, is trying to take apart. All right. So before Miss D makes any actions, let's put ourselves in the teacher's shoes for a second. Okay. So question 1, and the situation is going to be at the top of every slide. What can the teacher see? Again, hypothetical, we don't know the grade, but just think about a teacher in a classroom who is grouping students by standardized tests on achievement, okay, and focusing on procedures. What can the teacher see, observe, or notice about the current grouping strategy? Like, what are things that they can use their senses to figure out, right? Not what they think yet. Okay, so what might the teacher see happening in her class when she's grouping students by ability level per standardized test? Yeah, Gail, it looks and feels like tracking. Okay, maybe there's no teamwork. Students are continuing to struggle. Time on task. Students could be disengaged, right? The same group. Okay, that's a good one. The same group. All of these are really good, and it's just flying by. But the same group of students. Okay, so now thinking about how are the students feeling? Are the students feeling successful? Are they grouped by color? Okay. Teachers may see race. Maybe they don't. Okay, so students assume they're supposed to be in the low group, right? So now where are these identities of students and what's their self-efficacy and agency? Great question, Kristen. Do the scores truly match their ability? Okay, so now it doesn't look like the slide changed, but I switched the question because it's the bottom is just going to change. I wanted to make sure you guys could keep the context up there. All right, so now think about this teacher again still, and think about, well, what might, and some of you guys have kind of transitioned into this. So what might the teacher know, understand, hold true, or believe about grouping students? So kind of the why and what they're, for like I think back to one of my early practices. Well, that was the way it was done. And you're new and you come in, hindsight, not an excuse, but that was the perspective that I brought with that. Okay, so we've got lesson plans. Yeah, and then Kate, that ties into a lot of research that says, we often fail to give students who are perceived not to be achieving more remedial work, more rote, more memorization. We take the context out. So interventions are not working. The pace, right? Let's not eat joy. That's a good one. I can move quicker with one class, and the other class, they just can't move as quick. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So I'm hope you guys scroll through these and read these, and these are deep. I'm going to keep going. So now I'm posing questions 3 and 4, and I have to pose because of my timing. I'm sorry. I get very passionate and excited about some of these resources, and I did not spend my time as appropriated or as I initially thought. Question 3. What might the teacher care deeply about? Test scores. What might the teacher wonder or question? Is question 4. So yeah, could be test scores, peer student learning. This has come up a lot, even in the pandemic, is how are other schools in comparison doing, or how are other students? How are things going across the state? Test scores, growth in procedures. Ooh, why isn't it working for me? Yeah, like, is this so much to wonder? Yes, parent satisfaction is, I say this as a parent. Yeah. Right, they're wondering, maybe they've started to hear some things, right? Maybe you as a math, Miss D as a math coach is bringing in some of those things to their practice. All right, so now I want you to think about Miss D, Coach D, okay? What happens if she does not take any action, does not say any words, and lets the teachers continue this practice? And it's debated between doing 2 questions. There's short-term implications and long-term. Yeah, the students are going to continue to fail or struggle. They're on the short end. Yeah. The gap grows larger. That teacher's not changing. Okay. So I want you, so all these things, like the teacher's not changing, the students, we're kind of stuck in this cycle, right? Our organizations, our universities, our math, I say math organizations, both NCTM, NCSM, both at the teacher level, at the teacher educator level, which works with coaches, AMTE, all these organizations are like, we need to change, we need to break this cycle. Burnout, oh, that's a good one too. They're going to always continue to do what they've done, right? And shut down and burn out and perpetuate and keep it going. Okay, so now I want you to think about what actions or words could Miss D use to start that conversation? All right, I want you to throw that in the chat box. So what, thinking, and maybe it's a resource we use tonight, maybe not. Maybe it's just, here's some good words to try. But how do you start that conversation? I think that's the point of this question for you guys, is to think about, well, what could this coach do in this situation? It's uncomfortable. It might not be received well. Oh, tell me about your grouping strategies. Call in. How did you determine? Okay. Ask wondering questions. Yeah, notice wonder strategy. Works great for everything. How has it been going? That's a great one, Sarah. Yeah, focusing on the students is another good strategy. Just starting that conversation, right? Whether you're a first-year coach at a school, a veteran coach at a new school, and been there for a long time, you're an established part of the community, change is hard, right? And that's so hard. And so thinking about those tools that we've used tonight, right? And you don't have to answer question 7 because I'm running out of time. But it's really important to think about the tools we built tonight with this idea of how can you leverage others in your context? How can you use the support to fuel you, to push you forward, to be a critical friend in your own practice, so that collaboratively we can start dismantling these structures. Okay. And what I hope tonight, there's a lot of times that we look at our goals, going back to this idea of, our goals for coaching, our goals for life and New Year's and changing our practice, that it's this dichotomy. It's I failed, I did not accomplish it, or I was successful. And what I want you guys to start thinking about, if you're not already, and I think I know so many of you guys in this room, I want you to think about, all right, so I didn't get it. I quote failed. Let me try again. Now that doesn't work. Let me try it again, right? So some of this growth mindset, some of this strategic thinking, some of it knowing there's multiple ways to get to one end, right? And ultimately getting back to that success so you guys can have growth, right? And maybe it's over time, but growth over time is better than not growth. All right. So I hope tonight you were able to attend and connect, network, reflect, that you came out. I tweaked some things before. We're gonna get you guys a very current version of the slides. The webinar will be taped. Share it freely. We're open with all those things. Here's my email. If you have a resource that you've used for equitable mathematics, leadership, or developing your own anti-racist teaching practice or leadership practice, email me. I'm going to turn it over to, if you're interested in learning more about this type of work we do in our program, turning it over to Abby. You guys are fantastic. I love hearing and seeing your thinking. So Abby, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, we're so excited and we're so thankful that you guys spent some time with us this evening. Some of you have been at multiple webinars that we've had this week. And if you have, I feel like I get to be kind of like this exciting person where I get to say, but wait, there's more. So this really was just kind of a teeny tiny tidbit of everything that we do within our math specialist leader program. Some of you have gotten to meet this week, Dr. Baker, Dr. Wills, Dr. Sa, and they are they're the professors that work and teach a lot of our classes within our MEL program. The program really it's a 30 credit program. It's a master's program that also leads to the Virginia endorsement in K-8 for being a math specialist. So that's really, really important. And just such a cool opportunity that we're able to offer. I'll let you guys read the slide, but a couple things that are really important is just like the webinars were, we really pride ourselves on making sure that all of the coursework is 100% transferable to your classroom ASAP. So these are not things that you have to think about, you know, only doing 10 years down the road. These are things that you can do tomorrow. These are things that you can do next week. And that's what we really like, and that's what we really pride ourselves on. We do have coursework that is 100% online. Pre-COVID, we did have some coursework that was offered in a blended format. So you could take some courses online and some courses could be face-to-face. But right now we're obviously in a 100% online environment. All of the coursework happens in the evenings. So we know that you're working professionals. We know that you're teachers. We know that you are giving a lot of your time. And so we want to, you know, be respectful of that. Most of our students take 1 to 2 courses a semester. And yeah, I think that's really about it. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. If you had marked down that you had wanted more information, you should have already received an email from me last week, or maybe this week, I don't know. But if you are looking for more information, you can certainly send me an email. You can send Dr. Baker an email and she'll kind of bounce things over to me, or she'll be able to answer questions. You know, all of those things, we all work very closely together. And so we're able to get everything handled. So yeah, thank you again so much. Dr. Baker, thanks for having me on for a couple minutes. And I hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy almost Friday. Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve indeed. And thanks, guys. I know we're going to close up here. I just want to say thank you again. And just a shout out that we're going to be offering some more webinars. And like Abby has said, and Jenna's throwing in the chat box, the Mad Ed faculty, I mean, the reason we're doing them is we keep hearing from you guys that you want more resources. And, you know, for those of you who've already graduated the program, this is a great opportunity for you to network and continue, bring people in your school next time. I think next time, one of the things I'm thinking about is doing a full rehearsal, and we'll get some breakout rooms and do it in that manner. So that we'll do like a little background and then maybe an interactive section. And we're just kind of playing with that, but would love to hear your ideas. So don't hesitate to email me, or if you have other resources. But thank you guys so much. And I look forward to hearing about your adventures in trying this. Tag me on Twitter and we'll catch up soon.